Hi, I'm Sanne van Haasteren, and in this video you will explore a new approach of home. Welcome to my graduation project. HomeTown, a new approach of home for the urban environment.
Nout Manders suddenly found himself among a growing group of homeless people in the Netherlands. The 30-year-old waiter could no longer pay his rent after he lost his income due to the COVID-19 pandemic and landed on the street. Now he's staying in a shelter.
It's really hard because especially for my age, it's like you're not earning enough for the free sector, but I'm earning too much to get social housing. And in Amsterdam there's a waiting list, like for 16 years at least before you get a chance on a house.
We need a lot of houses. 1 million is a lot for the Netherlands. We have 7.5 million right now, so we need actually an extra big city.
You never know how things are going to happen, and you can lose your job every day, but you can also lose your house every day, and that was something I was never aware of.
You just watched a clip of Nout. He's just one of the many people that are affected by the tight housing market, and he isn't alone. With the current stress on the housing market, economic homelessness is on the rise. Those are people that are self-sustaining and have jobs, but due to the lack of suitable living spaces, have nowhere to go. This brings me to the starting statement of the project. Current approaches of housing people fall short as economic homelessness is on the rise, especially among the less fortunate target groups. It is important to search for alternative ways of approaching the design of the living environment, to create a more inclusive and socio-economic accessible living environment within the urban context. Housing issues have occurred before, like in 1835. The rise of industrialization produces factory workers. We are drawn towards the city all at once, where we live in poor conditions, basements and hovels. The municipality built houses for us workers. They still do. Apparently it isn't enough. Otherwise, I wouldn't be living on the streets of the Netherlands in my early 20s. Nowadays, people can and will take matters in their own hands, but the rules work against us. If this trend continues and more people keep on being excluded from society, will the world start to look like Caracas, the free city which inhabitants built themselves? Housing regulations were invented for a reason, but why? The Constitution to protect from the power of the king. The housing law to protect people from poor living conditions. The first building decree to equalize on a national level. The environmental permit to simplify the permit applications. And the environmental law to equalize on a national and eventually worldwide level. Urban wanderers have no place to go to due to the tight housing market and tight regulations, while at the same time there are a lot of vacant and oversized buildings. So why not partially use them and optimize to provide smaller houses and thus create more houses? 14 square meters is the minimal size that could still fit every living function privately, as later seen in one of the example housing typologies. And why not evolve from a housing law that no longer fully complies by giving back the freedom on how to use a space to the actual user of space, so they can decide what functions they want privately, what they want to share, and cost and qualitative effective choices. The city is a big urban landscape, full of experience in terms of social and professional aspects. Within a 10-minute walking range, you will find a lot of existing functions that you can take advantage of. I know a person that, for example, only showers after going to the gym. He says that he rarely ever uses a shower at home, so why have one completely for yourself? You can share facilities or use the spaces within the city that are already there. The principle of using vacant sites and oversized buildings to fabricate a new architectural model of optimization and freedom of choice could be reflected onto multiple locations. So now we zoom into the chosen location for this case study project, the old Carcass in Eindhoven. A building with a rich history, that could be linked back to the time of the industrialization. It used to be a former Philips office building, who after its days of glory became a neglected place. Perfect for squatters to build their home, it on itself became a place full of creativity and optimal freedom. Sadly, the owner thought otherwise and stripped the building down to its core. And so there the building stood, naked and lost for 12 years long, an eyesore for the locals until its final days. But it didn't have to end this way. Locations like this are perfect for HomeTown. HomeTown, a new approach of home for the urban environment. A building that represents a neighborhood compressed into a high-density, low-rise building. With a network of multifunctional collective corridors that are running through the building like streets on a city block, adjacent to the corridors are Casco housing spaces and shared facilities that could be used by all the inhabitants of the building. This compressed neighborhood is divided in smaller communities. Those communities each radiate their own identity that represents the families living in it. Within those communities, each household has the ability to choose their own living space, the size, what functions they add and what functions they share. The building process could be divided into phases per community, which works through a CPO process. On top of those communities, a network of collective roof gardens are accessible from the shared corridors. The design holds some key principles of optimizing the use of space, making use of the existing functions within a walking range, sharing facilities, giving back the freedom of choice to the user of space on how much space they need, what functions to share and what functions to add, and the possibilities of giving vacant buildings a second life. Optimizing the use of space could be approached by many different ways. To optimize a plot, there's a few steps to take. First, you start off with a new or an existing plot, which might or might not have a vacant building. Strip that building down to the structural base. Lay a standard building grid of 3.6 meters by 3.6 meters on top of the plot. Fill the plot fully with mass. In this study, the max height for the highest front door is 4 layers, which is under 12.5 meters to avoid the necessity of elevators. A 5th or even 6th layer could be added when a multiple story typology is added to the highest level. Extrude the masses that block daylight. After the extrusion, all the leftover masses should get enough one-sided daylight, so the housing units could be a maximum of 7 meters deep. Extrude the masses that block the main walking routes. Connect the masses to the existing building. Create an internal network of corridors with horizontal and vertical routing. Create a network of external walking routes, mirroring the corridors so every roof space could be reached and used optimally. Finally, during the CPO process, when the new users of the space have chosen the amount of space they want to use, fill in the housing typologies. A parametric program could be used. The use of corridors and back-to-back typology system ensures that a full mass could be filled up with only the single starter studios when necessary. This gives us a new carcass. A building that has shared facilities and extra requested urban functions. This community chose to share a kitchen and a dining room, for example. As a community, they maintain this space, and other communities could also make use of this space, with a small extra fee for cleaning and maintenance. People from outside the new carcass could visit this place by just paying a regular entrance fee. The urban passages have been taken into account. The corridors connect the communities like the streets connect the city blocks. From the 4th layer on, multi-level housing typologies could be added that have either a shared garden on top or a private air ride. The rooftop gardens on top of the 4th level are connected through corridors and outdoor stairs. The communities beneath those rooftop gardens maintain the space, get to decide what to do with this outdoor space, and have full collective ownership, under the condition that the outdoor space is accessible and approached as a semi-public outdoor space. This community is much higher than 4 levels. It is a community with multiple one-level housing typologies, mainly for elderly couples. They chose to add an elevator. For the people that want some inspiration for the finish of their housing units and who want to know how much space they actually need, there is a library of example housing typologies. Those example typologies are based on sizes that fit within a standard grid, so they could also fit within an existing building structure, like the carcass. They all have the regular housing functions privately, but of course to save space, you could leave out the bathroom or kitchen and share those functions, or go for a smaller typology and make use of a shared living space. The example typologies use some similar design principles: back-to-back housing with corridor access, flat roofs with functions on top or the option to buy air rights, heightened ceilings to add loft space, standard grid size to give the buildings a uniform fit, based on an optimized plot, the use of existing urban functions and the option to leave functions out or share certain functions, a Casco structure with flexible building system like computer flooring, lowered ceilings, thin partition walls, as most often seen within office buildings, and giving people the choice on how to use their living space. This brings us by the first example typology. This is also the smallest buying option that still fits all the living functions privately, like a bathroom, kitchen, storage, living space and sleeping loft. This option is 14 square meters. The current average cost per square meter in Eindhoven is 3,700 per square meter for a fully finished home. If those units are delivered Casco, the cost will be around 3,000 per square meter, which brings the total cost for a 14 square unfinished build, with extra corridor space taken into account, around 60,000 euros. A single starter that earns a minimum wage could afford 86,000, so there's still room for finishing the space. Then there is another good option for singles, the small studio, which could also fit all the living functions privately, but adds extra space to the living. A bigger typology could easily be used by 2 people. The loft space could serve many purposes, a place for sleeping, playing or relaxing. Elderly could choose a single-story apartment without loft space. The heightened ceilings then give an extra spatial quality. Then there's the loft house, perfect for a single adult that longs for a separate bedroom from the living space. And a small 3-story level family home, which could fit 1 to 2 children. The children's bedrooms have a play loft on top, and the master bedroom has a storage loft. Then there is an example of a home more similar to a standard row house. A back-to-back, 2-story level family home with a space for 1 or 2 children. People could choose to add a private outdoor space adjacent to their home and next to the possibility to make use of the shared roof gardens. Then there is a 4-level family home with a private roof garden and a place for 1 or 2 children. And a 5-story home with space for 1 or 2 children. Then there is a very tall 6-level home, great for sportive families. Each floor consists of a single function. This home has place for 2 to 4 children. Here's a different example of a 6-story home. This family has 2 children and chose to use the top 2 levels for their bouldering hobby. And last but not least, a typology for the explorer among us. By being part of HomeTown, people could rent an explorer sleeping pod for a small fee a night. So those are some example typologies, but of course people can also choose to go for other size houses, as long as it fits within a standard grid. When combined into a total structure, a place full of diversity, creativity and freedom emerges. So now we zoom into the detailing of the project. To show the principle of the building, a cross-section has been made. This section cuts a community with internal corridor. the carcass box-in-box built-in system, and the community with corridors bordering a light garden. We first zoom in to the carcass built-in systems. The housing units are individually placed between the existing floors. The ceiling and floors are both insulated. In this detail you can also see the computer floor that is placed on top of an extra south insulation. Then we zoom into the community that has corridors adjacent to the light gardens. Within this community, there are a few different principles that can be shown within the detailing. The first one is the foundation and the ground floor. The computer flooring provides some installation space, but also gives the ground floor an extra height. This height could be taken advantage of by adding seating areas in front of the facade. It can also be solved by landscaping or adding stairs. Then there is the principle of a standard floor. The communities chose their own facade finish on the frame. In this detailing, a wooden facade on a wooden frame is chosen. When a person or community chooses for an internal terrace, there are some different flooring and ceiling principles. The ceiling is insulated and a lowered ceiling is added. The flooring also gets some extra insulation on the slope. Then there is the principle of a roof garden. A roof garden that should feel like a green outdoor space. A green vegetation finish is chosen, and a balustrade has a planter. A wooden deck is floating above the vegetation and the trees from the urban jungle project could be added. The floors and facade are hanged from a main wooden structure. This so the system becomes flexible, and when a person wants to use their air right to extend their home, they could easily remove building elements without the structure losing their strength. In this detail you see an option for placing a roof extension. The computer floorings have a bigger height to level with the thickness of the green roof. This is mainly an option for buyers that during the CPO process decide for a multi-level house. There is also another option, an option to build a roof extension later on. The new facade is placed behind the existing one. And 3 final details that show the house dividing walls facing the corridors. This brings us to the community with indoor corridors. The detailing principles are the same as the community with the light garden. In this community you can clearly see the multiple uses that the corridor has. It could be used for horizontal and vertical routing, for shafting, to add social meeting spots, to extend shared and private facilities in, and to include it by the shared social functions. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I would like to note that with the HomeTown principle, a high density within the inner city could be accomplished, while at the same time avoiding putting people in boxes, as they now can decide how they want to live, how much space they actually want to use and what functions they want to share. And before I wrap it up, I want to give you a sneak peek in how the HomeTown could look like in 2050. This is the story in a day of a life of the inhabitants. Eindhoven, the Netherlands, in 2050. Within my community, we chose one facade that represents our communal identity. I am part of a community with people that are very individualistic. Together we decided to choose our own facade materials. In total, there is place for around 1,000 housing units. Oliver is a single starter and he chose to live in a 14 square meter house. Isn't it amazing that within those 14 square meters I still managed to build in a private kitchen and bathroom? Even though he chose to build his own bathroom and kitchen within a tight 14 square meters, he also chose to use the communal kitchen. Hey Oliver, did you bring the missing ingredients for the stew? Of course! Ben just moved to the new carcass with his wife Erika and his 2 children, Millie and Willow. Their community is the latest one to be added to the total structure. Tomorrow we could check out the shared facilities for the children. I heard they have a big playground in our neighbor community. The corridors connect the communities and stimulate the social interaction and random encounters. The corridors are wide so they could be used for multiple purposes. Space for expanding houses, social functions, vertical and horizontal transport like stairways, shafts and outdoor space. Jessie, the elevator is this way. I want to take the stairs this time. Jessie and Stephen are an elderly couple that live in the highest level of the Carcass Tower. From this point you have a wide overview of the lively shared roofscape. Who wants another sausage on the barbecue? Do you know when the building kit for the vegetable garden arrives? Next week. Rick is a single parent with 3 children. He has a great passion for cooking and built an outdoor kitchen together with his community. They live at the 3rd floor and have a 2-story house. On top of this house, he shares the outdoor kitchen. I got my hands full with those 3 children. Luckily, they have a lot of friends within the community. They will keep them busy. Ellie and Jean are young lovebirds and had a hard time finding a place for them to share, but in the new Carcass they chose to share a studio with a sleeping loft. Jean, what do you want for dinner? John is an expat with enough money to spend. He is interested in his project because of the freedom you get through CPO and the self-building of the finish. Emma is a widow. Since her husband died, she's an explorer, constantly on the move, exploring the world and getting the most out of her life. In the new Carcass, she bought a small space, just for her to withdraw from the travels, a place to call home. Because she's gone almost all year, she rents her space to other travelers. When she's home, she uses the shared bathroom and kitchen. Just like Emma, Julie is a traveler. She has a subscription on the HomeTown app, which gives her the possibility to rent a sleeping pod within a new Carcass. The HomeTown app provides a way for communities to communicate and arrange their shared facilities, additional fees for sharing and connecting to the other inhabitants as well. I think I will subscribe for the option to use the shared kitchen. It could be fun eating and cooking collectively. Lisa, shall we go to the rooftop? Yes, I'm coming! There are more stories to be told. Till next time in A Day of a Life Off.